Edward Scissorhands is about an outsider trying to understand love. In this video, I'll analyse the steps Edward takes to get closer to love, and to ultimately understand it. Edward was created by the inventor. However, the inventor died before he gave Edward his hands. He has been stuck in the inventor's mansion, with no idea what love is. This is until he is brought down from his mansion into the nearby suburban town by Peg, the local door-to-door Avon salesman. Edward wants the locals to accept him. He gets approval through cutting hedges, grooming dogs, and cutting women's hair. This results in him being loved. As the German psychologist Erich Fromm said, love is often nothing but a favourable exchange between two people. It could be argued Edward is doing this for his own enjoyment, but the town sees it from a different perspective. This is seen when Joyce starts to exploit Edward's submissiveness and takes advantage of him. From this point on, Edward decides to be more selective with whose approval he values. He seeks approval in Kim, Peg's daughter, through assisting her in a robbery. Even though Edward is arrested and the town turns against him, he equates the approval from Kim as love. He believes that doing something morally wrong is a part of love, as it means he gains Kim's approval. However, everything starts going wrong for Edward. He realizes that seeking approval is only a cause of unhappiness. Only when this egoic exchange ceases can he really understand what love is. Edward stops seeking approval and allows himself to experience real love. Love is when you really see a person without being clouded by mental judgments. Often in romantic relationships, the sensory impression of beauty, which gives rise to love, is blocked by judgments and biases. Our preferences, ranging from intelligence to appearance, become set in stone and restrict the flow of love one naturally emits. Edward is a reservoir of love. He is a silent observer of Kim. You can tell Edward's mind is silent as he recognizes Kim's beauty. When Edward and Kim embrace, words aren't needed. They say more with a simple embrace. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Often in romantic relationships, we use the other person to solve our problems. We expect them to give love, and all we have to do is receive it. Erich Fromm said, "Love means to commit oneself without guarantee, to give oneself completely, in the hope that our love will produce love in the loved person." Love isn't something we should take, it is something we should give. And while Edward believes assisting in robbery is an act of giving love, he soon realizes that giving love is more than seeking approval. It is residing in awareness, presence, and surrendering yourself to a person on an internal level. You aren't being taken advantage of. You are creating space for the person you love to be as they are. The psychotherapist Alfred Adler said, "There is a law that man should love his neighbour as himself. In a few hundred years, it should be as natural to mankind as breathing or the upright gait. But if he does not learn it, he must perish." What does it mean to love one's neighbour as yourself? This means giving love, creating space for a person to be fully as they are, beyond their ego identity. As Eckhart Tolle said, to love is to recognize yourself in another. Creating this space also increases your level of empathy, as you recognize the ego in yourself and another. Eckhart Tolle said, "If her past were your past, her pain your pain, her level of consciousness, your level of consciousness, you would think and act exactly as she does. With this realization comes forgiveness, compassion, and peace. Edward is experiencing proper love for the first time. He isn't looking at people through the prism of a restricted worldview. Instead of his ego being selective and opinionated, Edward is open and welcomes Kim fully into his heart. What separates us from others is a name, a label, and our past experiences. These experiences are part of our ego, and while they help us navigate the world, they don't point to who we really are. Awareness is shared, and love is recognizing ourselves in another. Presence is what lies beyond the name and the stories we unconsciously create. Eckhart Tolle said, "Be alert and present, and see that your identity is not from your past story. Who you truly are is the alert presence that is inseparable from the present moment. You are this, which has no name and no form." Love is the only way to escape the finite mind that labels the world and constructs an egoic worldview. If you try to navigate the world avoiding things you think you don't like and desiring things you think you like, you'll be in a constant state of disappointment. You are believing in an egoic worldview, trusting that the egoic entity knows what's best for you. The ego clings to things it thinks it needs to fill a psychological lack. This is where desire is misunderstood as love, a desire to hold onto the object of love and never let go. We can become paranoid that the person we desire isn't giving us their full attention. Edward isn't resentful of Kim. There is no clinging. He gives love, but he doesn't expect it back. Love is a deep knowing, a knowing that isn't limited by words. Edward knows Kim before Kim knows Edward, which could be seen at the end of the film when Edward returns to his mansion. This is where they recognize each other's emptiness, without essence. The author Robert Wright said, in Why Buddhism is True, to perceive emptiness is to perceive raw sensory data without doing what we're naturally inclined to do. Build a theory about what is at the heart of the data, and then encapsulate that theory in a sense of essence. When we see a person or thing, the raw sensory data is clouded by a sense of essence. This essence is what our mind puts on to sensory data. Edward hasn't had time to develop this essence, this mental judgment. He sees Kim fully, and Kim is finally able to see Edward without labeling him as strange or a freak. Kim's boyfriend Jim and Edward couldn't be more unalike, but Kim drops her judgments and biases and opens herself up to Edward. Erich Fromm said, "Love is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the problem of human existence."